Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
This is your host, Alicia DeBrell from Insight Media. Today I get to interview Kathy Alfaro, business advisor and women empowerment coach. She specializes in working with women who are looking to establish a strong foundation to grow their business, and helps break through the number one factor that keeps all business owners from experiencing income breakthroughs. So without further ado, I want to welcome Kathy Alfaro to the show. Hi, Kathy. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Alicia. Thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure. This is going to be a great interview. I love the questions here. So let's just dive right into it.
Sounds great.
What made you want to become a coach?
Awesome question, because it takes me way back to my early 20s when I embarked into the corporate arena. One of my first leadership positions was as a trainer. And of course, as any young person in their 20s, they're looking to do a great job, because the better you do, the more you get promoted and the more your salary just keeps increasing. So my motivation was really, get the job done, get paid, and, keep moving forward in the corporate ladder. And, everything was going well and as planned. And I was in another class, just like any other day. And we were coming back from one of the breaks, and I'm looking around for one of my students. She just kind of went missing. And so I asked around where she was, and I found out she's in the bathroom crying. So I run over to the bathroom, and I find her there just in tears. And I'm asking her, hey, what's going on? Turns out her husband had recently passed away, and he was the only breadwinner for their entire lives together. She was now in her mid-60s. She had never held a job in her life. So this to her was going to make or break her ability to feed herself, because there was nothing left for her to support herself. So I sat there and I just kind of became creative with how to help her see this as something she can do like anyone else. And her issue was the computer. It was too much. It was too complicated. She didn't understand it. So I just kind of told her, well, you have a TV, right? She's like, yeah. I said, you have a remote control? Yes. And I said, well, think of it like a remote control. Your computer screen is simply going to respond to the buttons that you're pressing. So she just kind of looked up, and I guess it clicked for her, walked over to the classroom, and she started working with it. And what I did is I kind of took some additional time to work with her throughout the breaks. And next thing you know, she goes out to do her job, turns out to be one of the highest performing employees out on the production floor. There were two things I learned from that experience. Number one, I found that when you're working with an individual to help that person, that it does something to you. It makes you feel there's a connection that happens with each individual. When you're able to impact their lives in that way, to me, it was nothing more than just a job. To her, it was everything. It was her livelihood. So when I saw that connection and my ability to make that kind of impact in her life, it changed me forever. The second thing I learned is you can change a person's life and get some free enchiladas the rest of your life. Because I'll tell you what, she made sure I had enchiladas every Friday on time. It was an awesome experience, but turning back the clock, she has no idea how she changed the direction of my life forever as well.
That's a great story. It sounds like you guys both changed each other's lives.
Absolutely.
What are some typical reasons why somebody might want to work with a coach?
When it comes to most things that we do, whether it's painting a wall or, you want to, get a table, most of us can try to do it ourselves, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But sometimes we don't have the time to dedicate to it, and because of the time, it translates to money. So we usually hire a coach or someone to help us or a trainer. We hire someone to get us from point A to point B to close that gap a little bit faster, so that we're not wasting that time, especially when time translates to money. So the first thing I find is that they're trying to save time and money, most importantly. The other thing is accountability. Just think about when we hit the beginning of the year, most people set out to go to the gym, and yes, I'm going to do this, I'm going to lose those 20 pounds, and come February, memberships are down. And what that boils down to is we don't have anyone holding us accountable to our goals. And when working with a coach, when you have someone who's holding you accountable, usually we get to that end line simply because we are thinking, okay, I have to do this because I have to report. That keeps us on our toes. So the biggest benefit is saving time and money and the accountability to get you there.
That makes sense. So who's your typical client? Who do you help?
Throughout my career, I worked in the corporate arena, so there were many larger organizations that I worked with. But with time, what I found is that I can take those skills and bring them to the small business owner, because unfortunately, the small business owner doesn't have the same resources as the bigger corporations. Now, with time, what I found was kind of like I got pushed into emphasizing specifically with women and their businesses. Women-owned businesses kind of run in a very particular way. They don't take as much risk, or they don't have the same type of confidence to get past the hurdles that we go through when we're setting up a small business or trying to push it through, whether it's the first 6 figures or whether it's to the X amount of client mark. We tend to be very conservative as women in the way that we push our businesses. So that's where I found myself to be honing in on, simply because I found that the tools I bring to the table just get them, jumping hurdles or getting past so many different self-inflicted ideas that don't let them push through or let them achieve the goals that they want to achieve.
How do you help women-owned businesses build a strong foundation? Like, how does that work?
Well, there's, I always say, with every business, there's 3 basic things in every business. Of course, you need to have clients and you need to have a product or service. So those are the first 2. Usually everyone in business has a product or service that they're offering. And when I deal with a small business, they usually have a few clients that they're offering it to. So, running the basics of what they do and how they serve it to their clients, that's usually the norm. And that's something that they have a pretty good grip on. Now, the third part of that is the operation aspect of a business. That is the area where most business owners kind of lack, in the sense that either A, they're not running their finances correctly, or they're not keeping up with the proper taxes, human resources, compliance. So that's an area of business that I help them build a lot stronger of a foundation with. So just think of kind of like a creative person, maybe an artist. They're great at painting a picture. They're great at finding the people to buy them. But when it comes to running numbers, that's not exactly going to be their forte. So what I do is I help businesses get a grip on maintaining those 3 equally as strong.
Kind of touched on overcoming hurdles. How do you help women that you work with overcome these hurdles?
One of the things I find with women in particular is that women throughout the centuries, we've always played small. Yes, we have women leaders out there. I'm not going to take that away. However, when we look at the broader spectrum of things, whether we look at the home or in businesses, we tend to be the backbone of all these organizations. And yes, the home is an organization. However, what we don't do is we don't accept the compliments. If not, what we do is we hover over self-doubt. Did I do that right? Did I get enough clients? Is that an effective number? Is that the way it's supposed to be done? So there's a lot of lack of confidence in the way we run things, even though we're always in the background making it happen. So I work with women to help find and strip the background scripts that are running, whatever's running in the background that's keeping them from seeing their greatness and their true potential. Your greatness is already in there. All I do is help pull back all of these scripts, all of these layers of compounded false beliefs about ourselves. I'll include myself in there to help you remember who you are and what you're capable of. You see, because somewhere down the line, someone told you, hey, you're not good enough. Hey, you can't do that. Hey, you're a girl. You can't play football. All of these things create these stories that run in the background that kind of keep us from jumping the hurdles we need to get through. So once we identify, we kind of like disempower it altogether. That coupled with action. So one is recognizing it and the other one is taking action in the opposite direction of it. But once you see yourself in movement, you can no longer tell yourself the story that you can't do it when you're doing it. More than anything is getting into the positive action that's breaking you past these hurdles.
How do you think that your coaching is different from others in your field? It's a competitive market.
That's a great point, because coaches, you can find them anywhere. And that's actually a good thing because I personally hire coaches even for myself. I would always recommend it to anyone whenever you want to achieve anything. But I can tell you that the way I work is a little bit unique in comparison to many of the coaches out there. What I find is when we think of coaching, there's the theory of how to do X, Y, Z. And then, of course, there's the experiential work on how to do it. So what I've noticed in the field is most people focus on what you need to do, and that works for some people. I personally happen to be a hands-on kinesthetic type learner. I have to do it to learn it. So when I've worked with business mentors, my criteria for me is that they needed to focus on how to do it more so than what to do. And that is my approach. It's focusing on actually getting into the action of doing. Think of it like an intern. The reason people intern is so that they can understand the inner workings of an organization, so they can actually learn a skill set so that they're able to apply it. You see, without the ability to apply a skill set, knowing the information does nothing for a business. And so my approach is to get into that action. And then we'll discuss later so that it all kind of sinks in. But this is the method that's given me the ability to, in the past, when I've developed training programs, I've taken training programs that are 6 months long and cut them back to 2 weeks with a 98% effective rate. And it's simply using more of our learning abilities and changing that and not so much focusing on what you need to do, but how it's done. We'll discuss what you need to do after you've actually applied it. And I guess, if we think of just an everyday example, just think of a teenager who's starting to date. And, as a parent, you look at the person that they choose to date and you're like, hey, be careful with this, and this, because it may lead to that. And your kids might look back and say, whatever, you don't know what you're talking about. Well, it's until they experience that XYZ that you were warning them about, that they turn around and say, you know what? Mom knew what she was talking about. So sometimes we need to experience things in order to understand and grasp the instructions. And I know that this sounds a little backwards because we're used to reading the information and then doing it. I kind of flip that around a little bit. Let's do it. Let's make a few mistakes. However, we'll talk about it. And now let it all sink in from there. So my method is a little bit different than the traditional. However, what I found is I'm able to close the gap, that learning gap from where you're standing and where you want to be. And that to me is what we're all after.
I totally agree. And I love the teenage example. And I kind of go through the same thing with a 2-year-old.
Yes, you will always find it. You will always find it with the kids. They will never go for the instructions. It's until they go through their experiences that they're actually going to say, you were right all along. So you have to get them there. You have to get them into the experience.
So what do you think the top 3 things that stop women from achieving their goals, whether it be personal or maybe financial?
Women were very special, I have to say. Not because I am one, but, But first thing, lacking of confidence. We tend to play second place all the time, whether it's in the corporate world, whether it's at home. We always tend to take that second position. So we lack that confidence in being first, in getting out there and shining at all times. Now, I'm not saying that there are not women who do that. What I'm talking about is more of in a generalized term. The common thing to see is that we always kind of play second. The next thing I find is the self-doubt. We can find a way to talk ourselves out of anything you could imagine. That dress that looks amazing on you, you will talk your way out of it. No, there's no way. Oh, my hips look this way, or no, but, look at my arms. We will talk ourselves out of everything if we let ourselves do it. The other thing has more to do with the mental distraction of the female. And this is more so on the scientific side. When we look at the brain functioning, we know we have the 2 hemispheres of the brain. And the male brain, the way they're set up is they have these 2 hemispheres, and each one is very well interconnected. So think of it like this. If a male brain sets out to, I'm going to become an architect, they become the best, absolute best architect there is, because that information is just moving around and it's just well interconnected, but within the hemisphere. The female brain, however, we have two hemispheres that are interconnected. So where each hemisphere for the male is connected within itself, the two hemispheres for the female brain are interconnected. What does that mean? We're constantly connecting one thing with the other. To give you an example, let's just say somebody says, hey, you look great today. We start wondering, why did they say that? Where did that come from? Well, I heard that so-and-so. We start interconnecting all types of ideas in all types of forms. So when a woman goes out to become that architect, she's not exactly the 100% architect. She's 80% architect, 80% mom, 80% wife, 80% sister, 80% mother. We do 100 things at 80%, while the men tend to do one thing at 100%. So that's a little bit of a disadvantage if you look at it from that perspective. However, all we have to do is learn to use what we have in the best way we can, and we get past our hurdles. So right now, we're working in an environment that's mainly set up to function the way the male brain functions. So when I look at working with women and the things that keep them from achieving their goals, this happens to be one of them. We are functioning in a society that still has not totally embraced the way the female mind or the woman's mind works.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense, and that totally resonates too. Do you find that there's a theme or hurdles that your clients have in common?
Yeah, absolutely. And this kind of plays back with what we just discussed about the things that keep women from achieving their goals. Number one, fear. Fear is the king killer in business. When you look at all of the programs out there, classes, webinars, seminars, everything we go through is built to help us get past our fears. And I've always said, if we can just put fearlessness in a bottle, there would be no need for anything else, because we would jump at the first sign of any opportunity. But fear is the number one factor that holds us back, because before we take a step, we create 100 reasons why not to. Instead of 100 reasons that can possibly go well, we go with the fear, and that's our default. So the biggest thing is understanding how to work past the fear. Aside from that, the other thing I find is focus. Going back again to what we just discussed about the female brain, what we need to do as women is learn how to focus on one thing at a time, because we're kind of like a natural juggler. In the daily life of let's say a mom or a housewife, you have the laundry, you have the kids, you have the food, you have the shopping, pay the bills, there's a play today, or the kids have to go to the soccer game. We have to juggle it all and make it all work synchronistically every day of our lives. So we're natural jugglers. Unfortunately, because we're juggling so much, we do the same thing in business. We become the human resource director, we become the sales department, we become the marketing department, we do everything. But what that does is it holds the business back from growing, because we are the factor that grows the business as a business owner. So in order to grow the business, we have to take that one thing and say, okay, I'm creating this website. We need to do, even if it's 5 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day, every day until it's completed. And that is how we break past our initial programming, or the way we're built, which is to focus on a lot of things at one time. You see, so that's how we survive as women, but it doesn't mean we can't use it to our advantage. So we just have to make sure that while we're juggling, that's included in there. So I know you asked me for that one thing, but those are two. There's that fear, and then there's the focus. If we can get those two taken care of, we can accomplish anything.
What are a few practices that somebody can immediately implement to begin to overcome some of these hurdles?
Like I mentioned, with focus, work on one thing every day, consistently, until completed. So if you are trying to get 10 new clients, you work on that, whether it's 10 minutes, 30 minutes, every day until you achieve the goal. And that's how we create the new habits and create the new paradigms and ways of thinking so that we can accomplish it. For the fear, what I've always said is learn to unpack the thoughts. And what I mean by that is when you start asking more questions behind what you're believing, you start finding out that they're not based on anything that is real. It's kind of like when little kids tell you, hey, Mom, there's a monster under the bed. They truly believe it because they heard something or they saw a shadow. So they're believing that this exists. And it's until you get them to reason out of it that they start realizing it was never there. It was self-created. So in the same way, if you're saying, okay, well, I'm not good at getting clients. That's a belief that you might have. I'm not good at sales. I'm not good at getting clients. It's just not something I'm good at. Ask yourself why. And sometimes, it'll be really interesting. You start almost realizing the answers to the questions that you start asking them. So if we run with that, possible answer could be, well, I'm not good at getting clients because I'm afraid of rejection. Take that and ask yourself why. Why am I afraid of rejection? Well, because my feelings may be hurt. Why are you afraid of your feelings being hurt? And as you go asking these questions and going deeper and deeper into them, you start to realize that there's these layers of stories that we've been telling ourselves. That is how we get to the core and that single point of belief that lies within us that really is made up out of nothing. It could have been that somebody in the 5th grade said, "You're no good." And from there, we just started packing on all kinds of beliefs. But that's why we have to unpack each belief system we have to find that single point of where it came from. That's how we disempower these beliefs from controlling us and from keeping that fear mentality from running our business.
How long do you work with your clients?
Great question. I've had experiences where a client simply needs a strategy. And that could be a 30-minute session because really they have everything together and they just kind of needed to sit back and maybe kind of get some feedback on some of the information, either A, that they already know or a new direction they should take. So that could be something that's 30 minutes at most. Should I buy this piece of equipment, or what's the best way for me to get around my tax situation? So those are some quick strategies. However, when we're looking to create bigger changes, whether it's getting deeper into the core of what's going on in your business, how to change certain ways in which we're operating, or if we're not getting the right clients that we want, if we're not charging the right prices that we want, these are just common things that come up with a lot of business owners, then that's where it's going to take a little more time. And I find that 4 weeks is a good starting place, simply because it takes time to understand where it's coming from and what action you need to start getting into and building consistency with. So 4 weeks is good to build that consistency. Now, if from there something else is needed, then, that's something that I guess is continually evaluated. But I think 4 weeks is the best place when we're talking about going deeper into the root causes of why we're not excelling in the areas we want to excel in.
So if I was looking at you to be a coach, how do I know you're the right coach for me?
Great question. The truth is that I don't think that I'm a good business coach for everyone. I might be too rough on the edges for some, and maybe some clients won't be a good fit for me. So it's not necessarily whether I'm the best coach for you. To me, I prefer to speak with a potential client and see if we're vibing, if we're a match, if really what they're needing is something that I can truly tap into and bring out of them. Because sometimes, we need to find this connection first with each other. Meeting people, it's not by chance. There's a purpose behind it. And sometimes either I'm here to serve someone in a certain way, or maybe I'm here to learn, just like I did from my very first example in training. But what I find is by speaking with potential clients, we kind of get to understand whether I am a good fit for them and I am going to help them get to the next place. So I always recommend, whether it's a 10-minute phone call to where we can talk and discuss your situation and how I can help you before making that decision, because the reality is you have to really go with your gut instinct and trust that. But speaking with me and seeing what I have to offer or what it is I can serve with, I think that's the best way to figure out if I'm the best coach for you or not.
Oh, that definitely makes sense, to have that pre-call ahead of time to see if it's a fit on both sides. How is the coaching process measured? How do I know it's working?
It's kind of like happiness when you think about it. There's really no number. We could say, well, from a 1 to 10, how happy are you? Success usually is measured by the result the person in question is actually looking for. So if what you consider success is making $10,000 a month, If that is the number you're looking for, then it's a little easier to measure because it's a concrete form. But when you're saying, okay, well, I just want to spend more time with my family and be happier, if that is how you're measuring success in your life, then it's a little more conceptual. So the first thing is to really kind of understand what it is that you are trying to achieve. What it is that you're defining as successful. Is it 10 clients a month? Is it, 100,000 a year, 200,000 a year? Or is it happiness? Is it time? Is it reduction of time? So if we can find a concrete number, that's great because that one's easily measured. When it comes to something that's a little more abstract or conceptual, then we base it on how you're feeling. And women are great at feeling. That's our strongest trait. So to me, it's understanding what you're looking for and closing the gap to getting there. So really it depends on the individual, what they're trying to achieve, and depending on whether it's conceptual or concrete in form, trying to find a way to measure. But again, the conceptual is going to be a little hard to measure, but you can feel it. And it's learning how to feel that you've achieved it.
And what do you expect from your clients? Obviously, it's got to be a good fit, and you've expressed on what your role is. What is the role of your client?
Well, I will tell you, first thing is you cannot change what you cannot control. And what I mean by that is I expect my clients to take ownership for their choices. Good, bad, ugly, exceptional. Own everything. I can't help someone if they believe that it's not their fault that they don't know how to measure sales. But I can help if they didn't know how to measure sales, but they're aware that they need to learn how to. You see, that's a whole different perspective. When everything we do or we don't do is because ABC, when it's something outside of you, then it doesn't matter how much I help you. You will always look outside to say, well, it's great or it's horrible because he did, she did. If we don't bring it back to the individual, if we don't bring it back to you and owning everything you do, every choice that you make, you can hire all the coaches you want. You will never get past the first step. You have to own every decision, good or bad. And from there, we can get you to the next step.
If you had one piece of advice for someone looking to achieve, exceptional personal growth mentally or in business or in their family, what would it be?
Get out of your own way. We tend to believe that we didn't achieve something because. We are the because. We are the thing standing in between us and the success that we're trying to get to. So if there's one thing, that one piece of advice is get out of your own way.
So I have one more question for you. If somebody wanted to get a hold of you for your services, how would they go about doing that?
They can go to my website at www.kathyalfaro.com or my Facebook page, Kathy Alfaro.
Kathy, this was a great interview, and I really appreciate your time.
Thank you, and thanks for giving me the time to share my experiences, and hopefully even just with the information I provided, I hope that helped someone out there.
Definitely given value, and that's great. Okay, guys, well, this is Kathy Alfaro. This is Alicia DeBrell signing out from Insight Media. Until next time.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.